Thank you for tuning in Outside the Playbook. I'm Jay. He's Ryan. Today we got a couple of apologies we want to make, but before we get into any of that, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel. Y'all know the slogan. That's one more for the good guys. What's going on, Fluke, man?
Nothing much, man. Another exciting week of NBA games, so I'm excited to talk about it.
All right, so before we talk about some of that action, one of the first apologies we gotta make, Carmelo Anthony, and this is on behalf of the fans. We came into this notion that, and we let the media dupe us, like we always do, that Melo was done. Melo couldn't contribute to a championship team. Melo was going to be the problem on the Lakers. He's too old. Coming off the bench, what can he really do? 16, 4, had several 20-point games. If I'm looking down, he's got 20 or more in 3 of those games, double figures, 6 out of the 8, playing key minutes. And there's this idea that coming off the bench is going to solve the problems for everybody. Whether Melo starts or comes off the bench, same with Westbrook, that has nothing to do with it. They're still going to play starters minutes, and they're still going to be on the floor with LeBron and AD for a lot of that time, because that's how they're able to contribute. Melo's most useful skill to this team is his three-point shooting. They're going to need that spacing on the floor. Him and Malik Monk play a lot of minutes together with LeBron and AD. But the way he's contributing, like I said, 6 games out of the 8 double figures. Couple 20-point games, multiple games with 6 or more 3-pointers. Hitting big shots in late game situations against Memphis, and some of that was done against Houston as well. But one thing that was talked about is his willingness to sacrifice and play the game at a high level for a championship level team without going out and getting 25 to 30 like he used to in New York and like he used to when he was in Denver. I have not seen any of that, especially since he's been back into the league. He took that little hiatus involuntarily that the Houston Rockets sent him on, picked up by Portland. They loved him there. They brought him back the following season. Obviously, they didn't get a championship or anything out of that, but they loved him in the locker room. They loved him, as far as being on the floor, late game situations. You had that third guy that could get the job done if Dame and CJ didn't have it rolling that night and you needed a big shot to hit. They loved having Melo there. Now, obviously, LeBron and Melo have a close relationship. You bring him into LA. I haven't seen any of those things that the media said would be a problem. All I've seen is him contributing at a high level, doing what he does best, hitting shots in big moments, hitting big timely shots, knocking down outside jumpers when he's open, contribute to the team's success, and being a willing defender. I love Melo as much as the next guy, but I do appreciate him coming in and doing whatever needs to be done to win games. So we owe that man an apology. He's not going to hear it from ESPN. He's not going to hear it from Undisputed, anybody else. But, I'm willing to say I apologize.
No, I think you bring up some good points. I think a lot of people focus too much on the fact that he's coming off the bench. And, you look at the stats, he's still playing 27 minutes. So he's still playing over 50% of the game. So, that's at least just about amount as any starter would be playing, maybe going into the 30s, but still 27, that's a solid amount of basketball that he's out on the floor. Clearly, he's making a contribution. He is the reason why the Lakers have a couple of the wins that they do. We won't get into why they were so close with Houston, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, they did win some games strictly because of his contribution and nothing else. So I'm excited to see what he continues to do. I think he's got definitely a solid part to play on this Lakers team. What the overall team becomes, we'll have to wait and see. It's still early into the season, so I think a lot of people are making some early judgments on the Lakers. But I think they're going to figure it out, and whatever their struggles are, I think we'll continue to see Melo contribute to their success.
I agree with everything you said. And another thing, too, is they've also been talking. I agree with everything you said. And another thing, too, is they've also been talking one of the most explosive, if not the most explosive point guard in NBA history. Triple-double king, averaged a triple-double once again last year. Like, he wasn't going to be able to figure something out or figure out a way to be successful on his team. If you're saying that, if you're thinking that way, you probably don't know much about A, the game of basketball, and B, about the history of LeBron and his teammates, especially with these super teams, and how they start the season. We've seen it time and time again. It just takes a matter of time for them to get gelled, figure each other out, learn how to play together, and we'll see them rolling, pretty shortly. I feel like within the next 3 or 4 weeks, as long as AD, Bron, and Westbrook are all healthy with Melo playing this way that he's playing. I don't want to see Westbrook come off the bench or anything like that. Just give him some time without Bron on the floor, maybe AD, Melo, Monk, space the floor with some shooters. But that's how you be successful. You don't just move the guy to the bench because somebody in the media or in a suit and tie told you that you should do so. Like, that makes no sense to me. I don't see why the Lakers would even go that route. Now, along with, we're talking about the Lakers' success and how they've been struggling with Houston and how they need time to get into form. There's a couple teams that have looked great. I say the Utah Jazz looked excellent. They got another win tonight in Atlanta without Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gay, key pieces. Chicago Bulls look excellent. New York Knicks, Miami Heat. I posted this the other day, but a fun fact about them: the Bulls, Heat, and the Knicks. All right, top 3 seeds in that order, as well as the Utah Jazz being the Western Conference number 1s. That hasn't happened since 1997 when the Bulls beat the Utah Jazz 4-2 in the finals. So that's a little fun fact I was looking at when I dug all this up. But I just named the 4 teams, and then you add Philadelphia in there. They're still missing Ben Simmons. Brooklyn hasn't really picked it up yet. Clippers, they're still without Kawhi. Golden State, they're still waiting on Klay Thompson. Of all the teams that I'm talking about, maybe a few that I haven't, who are the contenders and pretenders in that group of teams? Obviously, you know where I stand with Miami, so we don't even have to address that. But everybody else, who do you see in that group?
Yeah, teams? I'm still excited. We talked about it on a previous episode, but I'm still excited for Chicago. I read another stat, during the start of the season, but that was their first 4-0 start since Jordan. I think that's significant. I think they're playing with confidence. I think Chicago, we talked about it on previous episodes. I think they made some great offseason moves, adding Lonzo into the mix, adding DeMar DeRozan as another scorer. I think it's paying off. The games that they lost, really, it's not like they're being blown out. They're playing some good basketball. It was some pretty close games. I think if things maybe gone in a different direction, it's very winnable games. So I'm still excited to see Chicago. As far as the Western Conference goes,
but contender or pretender though? Where do you stack them? Are they a tweener? Maybe still trying to find out. But as of right now, do you say they look like if they got to the playoffs, they could
Absolutely.
Be a problem? Where
Absolutely.
Where are we
I would at this point put them in a contender category. They started off much better, honestly, than what I thought. I thought it was going to take them some time before they started racking up that many wins. So when they started off that strong, especially against some decent teams, even some solid teams, I was actually impressed. So I'm gonna say I see them definitely being. I'd predict them to be top 3, top 4 in the West. In the East as a seed. If they continue to play the way that they're playing, I think that they could be towards the top of the conference. Definitely at least making it to the second round, if not possibly Eastern Conference Finals. So you could disagree, agree, but I'm really liking the Bulls right now.
You said Eastern Conference Finals?
That's
too much. Listen.
Give it some time. Give it some time.
I don't think they'll make it out of the first
round.
And that's not a knock. That's not a knock against them. That's just the teams that they got to go through to get to the next round. Because first of all, they're not going to have home court advantage. Because you got to consider Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Miami, Philly, those are the best 4 teams in that conference, you know, and they'll probably be the 5th team, and they got to go through one of those teams to get to the next round. I don't think that if Philly got it together, Brooklyn, Miami, and Milwaukee, if they all have it rolling at that time of year, and then we got to consider Kyrie is not on Brooklyn right now. Milwaukee isn't healthy. Ben Simmons is not on Philly, and Miami is still without Victor Oladipo. I mean, there's a lot of these top tier teams that are still playing without, you know, their full roster. And then you look at New York. I mean, that's a lot of tough competition you got to go through to get to the next round, let alone the conference finals. I'm not saying I consider them maybe a tweener. Maybe they threaten a contender, but I mean, I have 3 contenders in the East, and this is an unbiased opinion because I've seen multiple other people mention them. Miami is a contender with the current way that they're playing. If they can keep it rolling, they'll most definitely be in the second round. I can guarantee you that. Then it'll be Brooklyn and Milwaukee right there when everybody's healthy and they have all their pieces in tow. Now looking at the West, the Clippers have been pretenders since the beginning of time. We don't have to go into detail as to why. Utah is a contender. I think my gripe against Utah is Donovan Mitchell has to be more than a 3-point shooter. He's got to be in a situation where he can get to the cup anytime he wants to, which he can, but it's because of the attention that he draws and being able to kick to Ingles, being able to kick to Bogdanovich, being able to get, you know, Royce O'Neal involved, keep Conley involved on the floor of the game, maybe get some easy baskets for Rudy Gobert. You're going to have Rudy Gay coming back, Pascal coming off the bench, Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench. You have a lot of different pieces that can help you be successful, but the only thing that I need from him is to find a way to, in some situations, be a decoy versus being the main target. The Lakers, we don't have to go into detail about them. We already know about them. Phoenix, I don't like what I'm seeing from Phoenix early on the season because they're struggling to start games and they have to fight back every single night. They tried to do it against Sacramento. They got burnt by it. They were able to come back, and CP3 was able to get 18 assists. He was able to, get the job done against Cleveland, and he was able to move up to 3rd place in the record books for all-time assists. I think, like I said, only because they were in the finals last year, we can say Phoenix is a contender. But other than that, I mean, the West is wide open after the Lakers, the Jazz, and possibly Phoenix. Portland still hasn't hit their stride. Still waiting for Dame to find his jumper, but he's going to keep shooting. And that's what I like from him. But yeah, I see it as maybe a 5 teams, maybe 6 on the outside. I see it as a 5-team race as legitimate contenders to win the championship this season.
I just have to correct one thing.
Okay, Golden State. I forgot about Golden State. Listen,
I admit I may be a little on the favoritism with Chicago, maybe a little premature. I admit it. But you didn't even mention Golden State's name. I am offended.
Okay. Now I'll say this: Golden State is in there with Klay Thompson. If Klay Thompson comes back and we see a glimpse of the old Klay, Golden State is in that conversation. All right, I'll admit I forgot about them. I can throw them in there, no problem. So we say 6 teams, solid 6, is in that conversation to get to the finals and win.
Listen, with the Warriors, quick.
You happy?
I am. Quick comment. The Warriors are looking really nice right now, even without Klay. Now, do I believe that they can make a decent run in the West without Klay? I don't think so. If they do better with turnovers, maybe, probably maybe second round. I don't see them getting to Western Conference Finals without Klay. But what I am seeing from the Warriors, looking pretty good. I mean, most recent game against Charlotte, I mean, not a bum team. Steph didn't play well at all. They still pick up the win by a pretty solid margin. So I think the main difference that I see between this year's Golden State versus last year, they're still able to win games even without Steph playing well. I think that is significant. I think you've got some key, younger folks like Jordan Poole stepping up. And so that's the reason why they are in a pretty solid position. Again, I don't think that they're going to come out the West without Clay. I would never make that argument. But I think even without Clay, the Warriors could be in-between team, you could say, but definitely a threat if others don't take them seriously.
I'll put Golden State in the same conversation with Chicago and New York. They're scary. They're a scary matchup for a top-tier team. I'll say that. For a top 4 team, if they don't get home court advantage, you don't want to see them in the first round. Period. That's about where I have them right now, because if Steph has an off night, where do you go from there? Jordan Poole isn't doing that every single game. So, I mean, we already talked about Wiggins. I'm not going into that again, but we have an understanding that if Steph doesn't have it rolling and there's no Clay, who you gonna call? Not the Ghostbusters. That was just a bad attempt at a dad joke. You know what? I'm gonna leave that in there. I'm not even gonna take it. I'm gonna just leave it. I'm gonna just leave it.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm on that. Next thing I want to talk about, okay? We owe one more person an apology, and you most definitely won't hear this on ESPN. You're not gonna hear it from Undisputed. You're not gonna hear it from, Boston fans. You're not gonna hear it from Brooklyn fans, Cleveland fans, LeBron fans. I think we owe Kyrie Irving an apology. The fact that I even fixed my lips to say that. Listen, you gotta know this.
Tell the people why.
I mean this, okay? Now, a couple days ago, Marcus Smart came out and said, we know what the opposition is game planning for. All right, we know that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they want the ball. They're gonna try to score the ball. That's what our scheme is basically centered around. All right. What they have to learn to do is that they need to learn how to pass the ball, and I feel like they will learn that. That's what he said. Now, Kyrie said, I get it. He said, hey, Boston, if you'll have me, I'll come back. But then as that season went along, he made a comment. He said, you know what? I owe LeBron an apology because I didn't realize that it was this difficult to lead a bunch of guys that didn't want me to lead them or that did not want to follow. Another time during the season, he says, there's certain people on this team that don't necessarily know their roles. I'm paraphrasing. That don't necessarily know their roles, and they keep stepping out of those roles, and that's contributing to the losses. All right. And then then Kyrie ups and leaves. All right. He heads out to Brooklyn. Everybody's like, oh, you said you was coming back, blah, 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 blah. This is your fault, the way, everything turned out, so on and so forth. And then the comments made by Marcus Smart the other day, it just made me think, like, he literally said this on multiple occasions and we didn't listen. He leaves and we say, okay, the Boston Celtics are going to take off. They're going to do this, that, be this and that. And now we're just starting the season. And Marcus Smart is coming out and saying this. Now, Marcus Smart has been there for 7 or 8 years. He is the locker room leader, the heart and soul of this team. And he's like many people have made note of, he's not someone that's going to speak to the media about locker room stuff. So it's one of those situations where, in my mind, they've had this conversation in private. Now, Kyrie, he's made it known, made it public a long time ago, his issues in the locker room that he's had with certain players. Now this, you mean to tell me that in 4 to 5 years, this is the same exact issue? And it's not like it's a personnel thing, because think about it. Marcus Smart is there. Horford is there. Brown and Tatum are still there. And it's not like, they overhauled everybody. There's still a lot of pieces that are still there. Even some of the coaching staff went from, the sideline up top to the front office, So I think we need to start, apologizing a little bit here and saying, you know what, maybe Kyrie was correct in the stance that he took, and maybe even more so, he was correct and leaving that situation, because this has been a constant issue that Boston has faced year after year. And I said this, I mean, I don't know how many different times when it came to when they get into the playoffs, they hit that ceiling, they can't execute, is because every team, like Marcus Smart said, they know what's going to be happening, what's going to take place next. They know what each player is going to do on the floor because they make it so predictable that they're not interested in passing the ball. How do you feel about, how do you feel about the whole Boston situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think some people may not like me for this, but I liken the Celtics to the Clippers. It's like these high aspirations and expectations, and they just, for several seasons in a row, no matter how green the grass looks, something always seems to go wrong. To me, that's what it's been for Boston. I do, I think we do owe Kyrie that apology. I think he was onto something that not a lot of people did acknowledge, because I think, it's just easier to blame, to just place the blame on one person than just say, hey, you're...
Especially Kyrie. Because that's become the norm. No matter what, I mean, happens, blaming Kyrie is the easiest thing that can be done for anybody talking about the game of basketball, especially the NBA.
Yeah. So because of that, because of just that natural sort of reputation that Kyrie carries about him, he's just an easy person to blame. Controversy seems to not be far behind him, and so naturally, again, it's easy to kind of shift that blame over. But yeah, I mean, I think Boston is definitely performing, as we all know, probably below their potential. I mean, especially having two caliber players like a Jason Tatum and a Jaylen Brown, still young, still, learning, still having room for improvement. But you would expect Boston to be doing a little bit better. I mean, they're below 50% right now in terms of win-loss percentage. Not really showing any indication, at least at this point, that they'll pick it up. Maybe they will later on in the season. But again, they're one of those teams where we have those high aspirations and then we end up disappointed.
Yeah. And, I mean, they have bounced back in the last couple of games since then. Just tonight, recently, they beat Miami pretty handedly, but it was an off night for the Heat. They didn't shoot well from downtown. A lot of wide open looks. I mean, I think at one point, Duncan Robinson was 4 for 15. That's not going to happen every night. And a lot of his looks were wide open. So we'll give them the dub tonight. But speaking of Miami, players of the week last week. Okay, Jimmy Butler and Rudy Gobert. Jimmy Butler went 4-0 with the Heat, 28 points per game, 8 rebounds, 5.3 assists. Rudy Gobert, 16.3 points per game, 15.5 rebounds, and 77.8 field goal percentage with a 3-1 team win-loss record for the Utah Jazz. Now, both of these teams go head-to-head on Sunday. I believe Miami Heat is now 6-2. The Utah Jazz is 7-1. How do you see that game going? Because these are two very good defensive teams, two very good three-point shooting teams. They play a very similar style. You got, Jimmy and Donovan, Rudy and Bam. And then off the bench, you got Clarkson versus Hero. How do you see this matchup playing out on Sunday?
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. These are both two great defensive teams. I think really is going to. I don't anticipate this being a very high-scoring game. But whichever team is able to get their offense going first, I think it's going to be the winner, honestly. So I think it really is going to come down as simple as that. I mean, if I had to guess, I would probably. I mean, both teams have been playing really good basketball. I would. It's going to be a close game, I think. I would maybe give the nod a little bit to Utah. That's just the direction I'm leaning in. No particular reason other than just looking at how they've looked all season. I mean, they really haven't had much of an off night, where the Heat have had kind of some off moments, but it's going to be a good game. Like I said, I think it's going to come down to who gets their offense going first.
I think Utah struggles out of the gate quite a bit. They did have a scare the other night when they played Sacramento. I think just tonight they only scored 15 points in the first quarter versus the Atlanta Hawks. Just 15. So I mean, I guess you wouldn't call that. I guess you would call that just a stalemate. I don't know if you would call that a scary moment for them. Just nobody's really scoring. I think Miami has a chance to beat them if they can shoot the ball well. If they're playing fast, if they're able to shoot the ball well, Miami does have a chance. Now, Kyle Lowry did sprain his ankle tonight, so we don't know if he's going to play, probably won't. On the flip side, Donovan Mitchell sat out tonight. He didn't play either. So if neither of those two guys are going on Sunday, I think I would pick Miami's remaining players over Utah's remaining players, especially coming off a loss from Miami. They don't normally play bad like that 2 games in a row. They respond very well. So I look for Miami to try and enforce their will early in the game. Bam is going to be very aggressive like he always is when he plays Rudy Gobert. But the key to the game, speaking of Gobert and Adebayo, is going to be the glass. Very important for them to both teams to attack the glass. But when Miami decides that everybody is going to defensive rebound, when everybody hits the boards, when everybody is boxing out, when everybody is making a conscious effort to get out to shooters, then get to the rim to try to help rebound, gang rebound, that's when they're at their best. And we've seen it with Jimmy and Bam a couple times last week, especially when they played against Milwaukee, and then they did it again against Brooklyn. When Jimmy and Bam decide that nobody's really going to get any boards except for those two guys, they can be pretty tough to beat. So I look for them to try to out-tough Utah in the game come Sunday. But they are vulnerable without Lowry at this point. That's why you need somebody like Oladipo to come back. He's a little bit better at being a backup point guard than Hero is, because you need Hero to go out and get you 20 plus, and sometimes that can keep the other guys off the bench from getting off. So it's a hit or miss, but I do like Miami coming out with this dub on Sunday like I do any other time. That's a wrap.